There's a barbershop in a small town called Kahuta, Pakistan. And honestly, there's nothing special about it, just another hair salon. But in 1977, there's someone around that barbershop who was paying very close attention. Not to the men getting their hair cut, but to what those men were leaving behind on the floor, the hair. See, the men coming into that barbershop, they work at a top nuclear facility just down the road. The hair just lying on the floor is carrying a secret that Pakistan has spent years and hundreds of millions of dollars trying to hide. What India's spy agency RAW did with that hair is one of the most creative operations in history. And it worked completely, right up until India's own Prime Minister messed it all up. So to understand why all of this happened, we need to go back to December 16, 1971. Pakistan's Army Commander General Niazi surrenders 93,000 soldiers to India. East Pakistan is finished and Bangladesh is spawned. Pakistan lost half its population, a third of its army and a quarter of its air force, just gone. Now there's one man watching all of this and is absolutely furious. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, Pakistan's new Prime Minister. Within 5 weeks of that surrender, Bhutto calls for a secret meeting in Multan. 400 scientists, generals, officials all gathered and Bhutto asked them one question. How long does it take to build a nuclear bomb? The answers range from 3 years to 5 years, but Bhutto picks this guy who says 3. And that same day he flies off to Libya, Saudi Arabia, Iran, going around to Muslim countries collecting money for a program the rest of the world isn't supposed to know about. Bhutto had been saying this stuff since 1965. His most famous quote, right? If India builds the bomb, we will eat grass or leaves, even go hungry, but we'll get one of our own. The 1971 partition didn't start this obsession, it just made it a countdown. But what really finally sealed it was what India did in 1974. On May 18, 1974, India tested its first nuclear bomb at Pokhran. They call it Smiling Buddha, and India is now officially a nuclear state.
Today, at 15:45 hours, India conducted 3 underground nuclear tests in the Pokhran range.
For Pakistan, this is genuinely the worst possible news.
I give a solemn pledge to all my countrymen that we will never let Pakistan be a victim of nuclear blackmail.
The only thing left that could level the playing field was their own bomb. And at this exact moment, sitting somewhere in the Netherlands, a Pakistani engineer working at a European nuclear facility reads the news. And immediately he writes a letter to Bhutto saying, I can help you. His name is Abdul Qadir Khan. Now AQ Khan is not a spy. He is a metallurgical engineer. But he spent nearly 3 years working inside Urenco, this big European nuclear facility in Netherlands. And in those 3 years, he's been doing something very interesting on the side. Reading things he's not supposed to read, photographing blueprints, writing down contact details for nearly 100 European companies that supply parts for nuclear devices. By December 1975, knowing that people started to get suspicious of him, he quits his job and flies home to Pakistan. Not alone, but with all the blueprints he had stolen and a massive shopping list. A shopping list that was about to become the backbone of Pakistan's entire nuclear program. So here's the question. How do you actually build a nuclear bomb? You can't just order the whole thing from somewhere, right? You need thousands of individual components from dozens of different countries, then put them together in exactly the right way and you have a uranium enrichment plant. And this is where Pakistan's game plan was honestly kind of brilliant in a very dangerous way. See, the international community had this list of restricted items, things you can't export. This was to stop countries from building nuclear weapons. For example, there's a part called centrifuge which was on the list, but the walls inside the centrifuge was not listed. So Pakistan went to Switzerland and bought them. Belgium, Netherlands, Germany, country by country, part by part, it was all quietly making its way to one location. A facility being secretly built 30 kilometers from Islamabad, Kahuta. And here's the part that makes this a proper spy story. While Pakistan was doing all of this, India's R&AW was watching. The moment word of Bhutto's Multan meeting reached India in 1972, Pakistan's nuclear program became the #1 item on every single RAW station. They tracked the European purchases, the front companies and also the money flows. By 1977, RAW had even produced a classified report specifically documenting Pakistan's purchases. So RAW definitely knew that Pakistan was buying the parts. What they couldn't prove was what exactly those parts were being used to build in Kahuta. And that's exactly what they needed. But the problem was, nobody could get inside Kahuta. Kahuta wasn't just a secret facility, it was basically a fortress. Surrounded by hills, ringed by the Pakistani army, no foreigner could ever go near it. Raw agents were already deployed in the area. They were tracking electricity consumption, trucks going in and out. But all of this is circumstantial evidence, none of it is proof that you can actually use. And then someone on the team asked the right question. If you can't get inside the facility, get to what comes out of it. Just think about that. The scientists working at Kahuta aren't living inside that place for 24 hours a day. They have lives, they go to the market, they go to the mosque. And they definitely need a haircut. And here's a little bit of science about what happens next. People who work around these nuclear facilities, they absorb traces of radioactive isotopes every single day. And these isotopes accumulate in your hair as it grows. Your hair basically works like a biological recorder. Raw agents identified the barbershop that Kahuta scientists were using. And the agents were known to have gone in as cleaners and sweepers to collect the hair off the floor, the most ordinary, forgettable waste in the world, and sent it quietly back to India. And the lab results were, the hair samples had radioactive isotopes consistent with uranium enrichment. These people were being exposed to levels of radiation that were only possible if the facility is actively processing uranium. And then it gets even better. Someone from the Kahuta facility is willing to hand over a complete blueprint of the plant, the entire design, everything for just $10,000 US. But under Raw's rules, any foreign currency payment needed the Prime Minister's approval. Except in the early 1978, the Prime Minister of India wasn't the one who would approve it. In March 1977, Indira Gandhi lost the election and Morarji Desai became the Prime Minister. Desai is 81 years old, a Gandhian to his core. He genuinely believes covert operations are immoral, that spying on neighbors is just wrong. He's also got his personal grudge that Indira Gandhi used Raw to spy on him, and he was honestly not wrong about that. But what he does next goes way beyond settling personal scores. He cuts Raw's budget by 30%, shuts down foreign stations and freezes all the recruitment. And Rameshwarnath Kao, the man who literally built Raw from nothing, who had spent a decade hunting for Pakistan's nuclear secret, was forced to resign. When Raw brings Desai the Kahuta evidence and the request to approve $10,000 for the blueprint, he simply rejected it. The blueprint was never bought, and the worst part is still coming. Desai had this warm relationship with General Zia-ul-Haq, Pakistan's military dictator. Zia had figured out that Desai was into urine therapy, very famously into urine therapy. So Zia would actually call him to ask things like, "Excellency, how much urine should one drink per day?" Genuinely, Desai loved it, thought Zia was a very good friend. And then in one of those friendly little phone calls, Desai tells Zia that India knows everything about Pakistan's nuclear facility at Kahuta. Zia immediately ordered to go through the entire Raw network in Pakistan. Every single agent connected to Kahuta operation were tracked down and neutralized. When Soviet invaded Afghanistan in 1979, the US needed Pakistan as a Cold War partner. And because of that, they literally said, "I don't think Pakistan's nuclear program is any of our business." By 1982, Kahuta was producing weapons-grade uranium. And this guy AQ Khan, he doesn't stop at Pakistan. He goes on to sell nuclear technology, designs and blueprints to North Korea, Libya and Iran. A global nuclear black market running for 2 full decades, all traced back to the same facility in Kahuta.